Welcome back to another episode of the Transformers, the creation of a billion-dollar brand. In the last episode, we were talking about Margaret Loesch and her journey from the Hanna-Barbera studio to Marvel Productions as a lead and executive producer or as a lead manager for their line of television shows and children's programming and animated series. And another person who came in that vein, but from a different way, was Lee Gunther, who worked for DePate Freeling in the late 60s, early 70s. And in 1981, Marvel Productions bought the company that Lee Gunther was working for. And he became, in the wake of that acquisition, the executive producer and executive director of the animated series of the Transformers. I think that's right. Yes. As the executive producer, not the director, but as the executive producer, he would bring in first G.I. Joe, then Transformers, then Inhumanoids, which is a show that I remember very well. But nevertheless, it was in this vein, because of the success of the G.I. Joe animated series, that he would executive produce the Transformers. And it was alongside of Margaret Loesch, who had her own successes at Hanna-Barbera, that you began to develop this team of executive producers, the last of whom, Joe Bacal, who came over in league in terms of Sunbow Productions. And the founder, he, along with Tom Griffin, were the founders of Sunbow Productions. They were originally advertising men in New York. But in the late 70s and early 80s, they had a success, a phenomenal success, by producing animated commercials for toy lines. And based on that success, they formed Sunbow Productions. And let me just see here. 1980. They formed this new company. And it became, and they devoted their time to just developing not only the commercials for the toy lines, but also animated series. And Sunbow Productions was brought in to do G.I. Joe by Hasbro, as well as Marvel. And then Sunbow Productions was brought in to do the Transformers animated series. One thing about the Bacal was the Bacal brothers, certainly, was that even though Joe Bacal was a marketing man and into commercials, Jay Bacal had been working for Ruby Spears, which was a rival of not only Hanna-Barbera, but also Marvel Production Studio. And Jay Bacal, when he was working on that cartoon series that Ruby Spears developed for Mr. T, met a very creative writer, Flint Dilly, who got his education in, of all things, classical rhetoric at UC Berkeley, and then went on to the University of Southern California and studied at graduate school the fine art of script writing for movies. And it was in this capacity that he got called to come over and do a few episodes of this Mr. T cartoon. Fine. But more importantly, what he got out of that relationship was a close affinity to Jay Bacal. And they became friends. So that when Jay Bacal, as part of Sunbow Productions, started to do the G.I. Joe animated series, he brought Flint Dilly in. And the thing with Flint Dilly is that he introduced this element of using the techniques of theatrical writing into and putting that into the basic animated series. And because even though these shows, these animated network series were directed at children, Flint saw the potential to use the various techniques of script writing in terms of movies to make the various episodes more exciting, more thrilling, more captivating. And he just brought that element in, and that was there with the various elements of the G.I. Joe series, so that when he would begin to work on the Transformers series, you could, as I said before in I think the last episode, you could see the entryway for teenagers, as well as young adults, but teenagers to get involved in these animated series that were directed, yes, technically at 4, 5, 6-year-olds, but would have this larger reach. And one of the things that Joe Bacal, as I was talking about earlier, Joe Bacal did not use everything from Bob Budiansky and the Marvel Comics people. He just used the basic theme, which was the theme in terms of the Cold War. But instead of emphasizing the Cold War theme, he focused on the energy crisis as a means to get the Transformers to Earth, and then have them interacting with the human being, with people of Earth. And the script in general, every script, just to go back for a second, every script in terms of television and network television has to have a Bible, something that tells the new writers that comes on, and for the old writers, helps them keep track of the various characters, their development, their story arc, the themes, subject matter that has already been tackled, and the Bible for the Transformer series would have nearly 1,000,000 pages. Before it was all over, which just shows you how much they had to keep track of. And the energy crisis angle, from what Joe Bacal in particular took away from what Bob Budiansky and the Marvel Comics team had done, was very apropos to the times, because people could still, in 1984, remember very vividly the energy crisis, which was caused in part, and I should say in part, was caused primarily by OPEC, the organization for the production of exporting, petroleum exporting countries. And that had been, in the latter Carter years, a total fiasco. People having to go to the gas tank on various days, and you could only go to the gas station if your license plate ended in an even numbered day or an even numbered number, and then for an odd number, then you could only go on odd days, and that was a line of thinking, certainly a line of relation that would draw people in particularly the adults who may have happened to be sitting there with their children, or were sitting there purposely with their children to see what their child was watching in terms of cartoons. And that is how the first pilot episodes, it was really a miniseries, just like the G.I. Joe miniseries. First, a miniseries was created of 3 episodes, and that would form the pilot. And that was the same thing with the G.I. Joe, even though I think that was 5 episodes instead of just 3. But that would be the way in which the Transformers, and the reason why the Transformers would leave Cybertron and come to Earth. And one of the things that Jay Bacal brought over, because I wrote it on the other page. Let me see if I can turn this over without dropping anything. One of the things that Jay Bacal, as well as Joe Bacal, would find instrumental in the success of the animated series, just as with G.I. Joe, was having a good voice director. And this would be Wally Burr, who was brought over from also the G.I. Joe series to help to get the best. He was known, and I think he's still alive, is known as a tough taskmaster, but he brought the best out of the actors. And when we come back, we will talk about how they managed to get the right voices for the right characters.